All right. Welcome to Paranormal, the new normal. We are back once again to go into the fray. And this week, our guest, which I am very, very excited about, as she is an author and she wrote an amazing book, which I have read cover to cover, and I cannot wait to talk to her about it. This week's guest is Brandy Alexander, author of Genesis, a paranormal alliance destined to fight the powers of darkness. And yes, I had to have that subtitle in front of me because I would never remember it. But
It took me a little while to remember it too, to tell you the truth. I kept stumbling over it every time I'd say it.
But Brandy, glad to have you here. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I am so glad to be here, and thank you for having me. My name is Brandy Alexander, and I am the author of Genesis. I am from Texas. I'm born and raised, so yes, definitely a Texas girl. Very avid reader my entire life, and just finally made my dreams come true one day. Just decided I was tired of putting it off for later and something I might do one day, and I just decided to make it happen. So I live with my husband and my son, and I teach school, which I absolutely love. I love kids. I love teaching. I get to do the fun stuff, the art and the theater, a little bit of everything. Very hectic, but absolutely so worth it. But I just finally reached a point in my life where I thought I want to do what I've always wanted to do, make my ultimate dream come true, and that was to publish my first novel. So I made that happen, and I am so excited to tell everybody about it.
Well, I'm excited to have you here. And yes, I could definitely tell you're from Texas. That accent's a dead giveaway, which I was going to ask you where it's from, but I don't have to do that now. So that's a good thing. Uh,
And when I'm tired, it gets worse. I drop it a lot because of theater. You have to learn how to speak without an accent. But then when I get tired at the end of a long day, like today, it starts coming out just a little bit stronger, and you start hearing my hick.
I wouldn't call it a hick, but let but why
Sometimes
don't
it feels.
yeah, I'm sure. But why don't we let you give the listeners a little preview or a summary of your book as much as you like to say, and then after you're done with that, I'll get into my glorious review of it.
All right. Well, I have this. It's very exciting, very thrilling, very epic, save the world kind of story. I guarantee you, it will be the most unique story you've read in a long time, and that it's going to keep you guessing all the way to the very end of the book. A lot of surprises, and I feel like it just really gives you what you're looking for when you want something that makes you feel good at the end. You know, that just hurrah moment. It's about a guy who can see the spirit world, and he's grown up with his brother who happens to be ghost, and along the way he's collected a couple other ghost friends, and they live together, and they're sort of the comic relief of the book. Very wisecracking kind of guys, and I've really come to love my characters. And anyway, as he's going about life, he's become a detective with the help of his brother and his friends. They can sort of give him an edge, and he ends up finding out that there are some demons as well. And as he begins to research the demons, he realizes that they are escaping hell and up to no good. And he's got to figure out why, what's going on, how they're getting out, what they're after, and of course, eventually save the day. And along the way, there are some angels I've thrown in, and it's just sort of an inspirational thrill ride all the way to the end, completely fictional, but it's hard to write about angels and ghosts and demons without your own faith seeping in. So it's just sort of one of those books that you can enjoy no matter who you are, no matter what age you are. And I think really, really get into it. Sort of one of those engrossing books where you don't want to put it down.
Yes, I 100% agree, and I actually have listeners. I read this book over the span of a month. It took me a month because with kids and everything else, I can't read like I used to. In the old days, I would have finished this book within less than a week. But I mean, I would just power through it in a night, maybe even back in the day, but like I did back in the good old Harry Potter days. But and yes, I did finish a Harry Potter book in one night, and that was one hell of a feat to do. I don't think I went to sleep till like 4 in the morning. But yes, this book is incredible. I mean, as soon as I read the first 4 or 5 chapters, I started getting memories of reading the Vampire Academy series, the Inheritance Cycle, or the Aragon books, as people may call them, Harry Potter. I mean, just all my favorite fantasy novels. I mean, I even got I mean, I even got like Dead Zone feelings from this. Like that's kind of where I was going when I first started reading it. It was like I just read Stephen King's Dead Zone like a couple years ago, and I kind of was going to that. Or wait a minute, I had the right name
I
for
can,
that.
yeah, I can see the comparisons.
I mean,
Definitely.
but it definitely differs from Dead Zone in a lot of different ways, which is a great thing because I mean that was a good story, but you want to have your own spin on things, of course. And as an agnostic person who does not believe in any religion 100%, I believe in a lot of religions, just none of them 100% because I yet to see the proof, which I wish that some of the things that happen in this book would happen to me so I could see the proof if there is there, if it is out there. But I mean, I just, as an agnostic, I enjoyed this book thoroughly. And if,
Good.
even at first, I thought I was, at first, I mean, I never hesitated, but I thought for a second, like, is this going to be way too Christian for me? And I was like, nope, not at all. Just a good adventure book right in the fantasy world that's perfect. And I mean, it could even, it's not even fantasy because, I can honestly see something like this happening in real life. This may happen somewhere in the world. Who knows?
I took the concept of what if, could it happen? And then I turned it into, this is my imagination of if it were true and if it does happen, this is what it could be like. And as much as somebody who does have faith in God could enjoy this and I think completely connect, at the same time, you have to have faith in something, whether it's a higher power, faith in your friends, faith in yourself, faith that the world is going to keep turning. You have to have that. And so I think no matter who you are, no matter what religion you are from, either you can still make connections with what's happening in the book and with the characters.
I mean, yeah, I mean, and we all need that faith the world's gonna keep turning, especially nowadays with Russia. But I mean,
Yeah.
I believe they just said in the news the other day that Putin said the next step is going to be nukes, and I'm
Yeah.
sure our
World's gone crazy.
I'm sure our government would never let that go to that level. I would hope at least, because that would be the downfall of us all, truly.
And that's where our faith comes in. Do we have faith that they'll make the right choices?
Yeah, we can only hope. I mean, I'm not gonna get into president stuff because that's just not what this
Right.
podcast. That's
That's just a whole different program, different podcast.
Yeah, that's a different podcast that I never gonna start because I don't need to be on a government watch list. But but I mean, the main character in this book, Clay, I can identify with him so much. Like he acts the way in the book that I would act in real life. His thought process is very similar to mine. Like I love the main character of Clay. I like that. I like Garrett, the priest in the book. I like him. I like that he's not like a
I want
tight
him to be
priest.
personal. He's a guy. He happens to be a priest. He's dedicated his life to God, but he's still a guy. He's the kid he grew up with,
I,
and no matter what, that's who he still is.
I mean, it reminded me of my pastor from when I was a kid. Shout out to Pastor Dave Brechter. If you ever hear this, I doubt you will, but we'll never. Who knows?
Who
But
knows?
he was the second pastor I had as a kid, and he came to church new, and he was a great guy. He was loose. I mean, he came to my house with his son to watch wrestling pay-per-views back in the 90s. So
Oh yes. Oh yeah. I remember I loved Glow was my favorite, of course, because I was the girl and I had to watch Glow.
I never watched Glow yet. I have yet to see it. I've wanted to watch it because it's Mark Maron, and I love Mark Maron. He's what wanted me to get into. He's one of the people that wanted to make me be a podcaster to begin with. But I do love
I'm a
that show.
child of the 80s though. I'm a child from back that time. So I grew up watching it.
Yeah, I grew up watching WWF for many years, and it's a fun part of my childhood. But yeah, the Garrett, the priest in the book, is just a good character. He's very relatable. I mean, if all the priests in the world were like him, it'd be a better place. But
I love him. I love all my characters. They each have their own personality and their own quirks and their own stories. And truthfully, a lot of the stuff that I tell in the book, a lot of the little quirks and stories, those come from my own life. A lot of that does. I base it on things that people I know or things that I've done.
so the book was just incredible. I mean, I'm a supernatural fan and a fan of all shows like that. So anything that's to do with like demons versus like humans is always like an interesting topic to me. I I mean, I truly do believe in demons. I believe in demons more than I believe that there's angels, but that doesn't make sense because if there's bad, there's got to be good. Like yin and yang has to exist in this world. So
Right.
I mean, that's just me. I mean, there may be angels out there. I don't know. I've heard stories of things that have happened that are just like I can't think of anything else that would do that.
Unexplainable things that, what else can it be? And I think part of it's the human part. We want to hope, we want to believe. And so when we can't explain it, we give it a reason. Uh, by writing it the way I did, I just wanted to kind of show, like I said, those who believe that there are angels out there, how would they interact with us? What would their job be as angels? And in Genesis, you get to see the little things that they do, those little mysterious ways that play out in the long run. You don't know why things happen at first, and then later on, you realize the why. Sometimes you don't find out at all, but I wanted to show how they interact with us, how they create the future. Uh, they don't know what's going to happen, and God knows what's going to happen. Where everyone needs to be and what the future holds. So I believe that the angels in the book are sort of our connection to that, to show how God would work with us, what kind of jobs would He send them out to do. And so I had fun including them into the book.
Yeah, I mean, I can only hope well, we'll get to what I hope in a little while, but when we get to because I have a question that's lead to a lot of other questions for me eventually, but yes, the Angels were a good ad, and I mean, if you didn't mention those in your summary, I wasn't even going to bring them up because I thought that'd be a good surprise for the book that they're in there, but oh well.
Well, they're mentioned on the back. I do mention them on the
Oh, okay,
summary.
okay,
Yeah, they're there.
Because I mean, I didn't read the back, I just jumped right into the book, and I'm happy I did. Just like I'm sure Clay was happy at the end that he did fall into that ice in the beginning of the book, and that just led to the whole thing happening. And I'm sure he was very happy he jumped into that. But I mean, and the ghosts are freaking, oh my God, hilarious. I mean, I love Tex, I love Buzz.
Everyone always says his name first, Tex. He's my favorite. I have so much fun writing Tex.
Who doesn't like a cowboy? I mean, come on. We grew up
Yeah.
playing cowboys and Indians, or cowboys and Native Americans to be PC.
Good old cowboy who has more fun being dead than anybody ever could possibly dream of. And
Oh, I don't know about that.
no, yeah. And I love leaving that we don't exactly know when he was from. We know he was around the, beginning of Texas becoming a state, but it's always been this mysterious thing. And I may throw some hints in future books. This is going to be a whole series. And I think the more we read about him, the more we'll get to know about him.
All right, well, I just took away two of my questions, but I'm happy you said that. Because yes, I was going to ask you eventually once I asked you if there's going to be sequels, which I already knew the answer to that, but I wanted to make sure our listeners heard it. But yeah, that was gonna be one of my questions: is does Texas back? Do we actually find out who he is eventually, and is he possibly going to be a famous cowboy that we would all know by name?
I don't think you would know him by name, but he does have a backstory. There's a reason why he's still here. I've already written the sequel. It's done. It's in the editing phase, so it'll probably take a little while. That's a long process, but it is complete. And I'm actually now working on the outline for the third book. I know what it's going to be about, so I've got to start getting it put together. I try to spend my summers writing if I get a chance, and since I teach, it's the best time of the year for me to get a lot done really quickly.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I hope is that eventually you throw in a angel named Castiel just as a little nod.
Well, they, believe it or not, in the sequel, they dive into the TV series Supernatural, and they use a little bit of what they've learned on that show in the sequel. That they're trying to, when they're trying to figure out the big plan to take down the bad guy, somebody starts to remember, well, you know what worked for them, and I do throw some of that in there. Yes.
Oh, you just made me the happiest fucking man on earth. But, but I mean, on the other podcast, I'm on Bracket Bastards. I love Supernatural, and one of our ladies on the show, Jess, she loves Supernatural as well. So I'm always sending memes to our messenger group, and she's always dying laughing at them, or she sends them, and vice versa. It's just,
oh, I'm a huge fan. I mean, I go back to days of Buffy and Angel, and heck, even before that, there was a vampire show on called Kingdom that I used to watch. And
oh, Kingdom, yeah.
Oh yeah, that from Ghost Whisperer, anything that came out that had to do with the supernatural, that was all me. I feel like when I read books or when I watch TV, I don't want to see something that I live every day. That's kind of normal. I want to read something that's going to thrill me, use my imagination, and that's where I get my enjoyment from. So almost everything I read or watch, for the most part, is very of some sort dealing with paranormal.
Yeah, I mean, I've read so many paranormal series in the past. I mean, going back to freaking Goosebumps as a kid, even. But
Yeah,
I mean, well, okay, yeah, Goosebumps too, I guess. But I meant to say Animorphs. but
right.
but I mean, I mean, this book that you wrote just reminds me of. It has elements of Vampire Academy series in it, somewhat. I mean, with the amount of friends and everything. There's even some Harry, like I was thinking of the ghost in the Harry Potter and like Hogwarts and Harry Potter when I was reading this book too, like just because they have the same comedic elements as some of them. But it's just
I probably draw inspiration from all these sources, all the different shows I've watched. And I'll even, watch a lot of like the detectives shows on television. And my husband's like, why are you taking notes? And I'm like, are you kidding me? I can use ideas and plots and twists. And, if you pay attention to the pattern in which things are revealed, I guess I've read so much in my lifetime and seen so many movies that it just inspires me. As I was writing, I actually used the idea, the first fight scene, for example, when they have the big battle, I tried to approach it like a camera, like you were looking at it from the lens of a camera and you were watching the room and all the fighting that was happening simultaneously. So often when I read a book, I get lost in the fight scenes. I don't know what's happening because the writer has too many things happening all at once. And I really wanted the fight scene to be happening at the same time because
shit. Sorry.
that's okay. So I lost my train of thought. So I had all these people fighting at the same time, and I wanted the reader to understand what was happening while not losing track. So I tried. So I wanted to approach it like a camera coming down and viewing the entire scene, which was a little bit different. I just I'm sorry, I've sort of lost my train of thought as we've come along
You
here.
were talking about detective shows and how they inspired you.
Oh yeah, so when I watch shows, no matter what it is, whether it's a supernatural type show or whether it's a detective type show, I'm always taking notes because I'm always learning from that, and I think that's what's actually helped me become a better writer over time. Is the more you read, the more you watch, the more you experience, the better your writing becomes. When I was young, I'd only read very linear storylines. And it wasn't until I would think I was in junior high when I picked up my first book that took different storylines, different people, different points of view, and would mix it up. You would read about somebody until they got to a certain point, and then it would just stop and it would pick up with somebody else. And I had never read a book like that. And it was so exciting to find something that was formatted like that. I think that was the first time that this made me want to write something just the same. I can remember walking down the school hallway with a book in my nose, not even looking where I'm going, trying to get from class to class because I wanted to read as much as I could between bells. And that I wanted to do that one day. I wanted to write something that would have other people feeling that same way, that completely enthralled by the story and you don't want to put it down and you can't wait to see what's going to happen. And that was what I was, I think, trying to accomplish. That was my dream.
Yeah, and I believe you truly did accomplish that because this book is just I couldn't put it down. Like there are times I wanted to go do things when I was reading it out, or when most time the beginning of reading it, I was off from work because of my surgery, and I was just in the backyard with my kid, like letting her play outside while I sat there reading. And anytime I had to get up and go help her or something, or she started crying, and I had to go help her, I actually got a little mad because I had to put down the book and stop reading it. I'm like, God, come on, like
Frustrating. Yeah.
very, but I mean, it's just such a good book, and I mean, oh, so
And I
many.
wanted it to feel like the more you read, the faster pace it got. And the closer to the end, the more it picked up. And I wanted the reader's heart to race along with that story, the closer and closer you got to the conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely felt that when I was reading it. That like
But
towards the end, like as I told you earlier, I read the last 30% of the book, which you said the book is around 400 pages, I believe.
Yes, sir.
So
Absolutely.
I probably read the last 70, 80 pages of it in 3 hours. And it just like, I of course I had to get up a few times and deal with kids and whatnot, but I had to keep going. And like my girlfriend's like, "You going to come to bed?" I'm like, "I can't. I have to finish this book. I have to. I need to see how this ends. I need to play it out."
Oh, you just totally made my day. That is so awesome.
And the book is
I
just,
was going for.
yeah, I mean, like all good books, like the great Stephen King does in a lot of his, like towards the end when it just climaxes and it gets it's so good to read it. It's just
And
it,
I wanted to like even give in little tiny surprises that you weren't expecting all the way up until the very last page. Like it just, even once the climax was over and you've had the thrill ride, I didn't want it to be completely over. I wanted a few more of those twists and turns right there at the very end. So I don't know. I just had so much fun writing it. It felt easy, for lack of a better word. I shouldn't say that about writing a book. That sounds crazy, but I just had such fun writing it. And I loved the characters and I loved the story. And I would just let it completely take me away. I'd write, 10 pages a day on average, I think. So I finished it in less than a couple of months. I took a few days here and there where I'd take a break, but it was really enjoyable.
yeah, I mean, and honestly, I think it should be easy to write a book if it's something you're really passionate about. It should be so easy to write a book, which I mean,
Yeah.
I tried my hand at it in high school a little bit. I mean, I started writing well, it was a kind of a book, but it was like it was for a project. And I just went way over like what they wanted
Oh
us to
yeah.
do. Even like it was like a Macbeth meets Star Wars type thing, which basically is Star Wars. But I mean, I just put my
Star
own,
Wars is actually the same story as many, many, many other stories in the past. If
of
you sat
course.
down and really break it down, yes, because it's the good versus evil. The triumph of one over the other, and that is such a classic. Everybody wants to win, the good guy to win, and
Oh, I mean, well, as someone who liked
deep down we want to feel good.
I mean, as someone who liked the prequels, I kind of was rooting for the bad guys towards the end of that. But I mean, but
Well,
who?
you got to have good bad guys. If you don't have good bad guys, you want somebody to hate the bad guy. When you have invent your protagonist, your antagonist, I don't think that it's as enjoyable if you don't truly just loathe that bad guy and you want to see him go down, and you want to be triumphant.
I mean, and yes, I agree with that, and you definitely played into that with the relationship between the different demons in the book. I mean, I just hated the main one so bad because of the way they treated the lesser demons, and it was just,
Right.
I mean, it was a very good like symbiotic relationship there, and it
Thank you.
was just, oof, like it just
I
made
had
them.
fun writing the demons because they're so dark and creepy, and it really gives me a chance to break out all those descriptive words. I had a friend that was reading the book, and she said that she was where the very first time that you see the demons in mass. And while she was reading that scene, her cat was under her bed making noise, and it scared her really bad because she was right in the middle of the creepy part, she said, and all of a sudden she hears clicking noises underneath the bed, and it just completely gave her chills, and she had to throw the cat out of the room. But I said, I'll take that as a compliment. That's what I was going for.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even meant to be a horror book, but
No.
if it throws in some of those classic horror book elements where you actually are looking around, I mean, that's like,
Every time somebody asks me, what is your genre? I'm like, well, it kind of covers almost every fictional genre out there. It's even got
yeah,
a touch of love, a teeny tiny touch of love. It's got everything in there for you, whether you like mystery or thrillers or detectives or paranormal or Christian storylines, or but no matter what it is, I tried to put just a little bit of something in there for everybody. So sometimes it's hard to narrow it down when I have to fill out paperwork and they ask you, what is your genre? Paranormal fiction is what I go with because it covers it best. But truthfully, I fit in so many categories.
yes, I mean, it's you. I mean, I could see you in horror, I could see you in fantasy, I can see you in sci-fi to a little bit. I mean, because I mean, the Bible is the original science fiction to a lot of people. I mean, even if whether you believe
A lot of
that,
people consider angels and demons and spirits to be science fiction. So And sometimes it's a point of view, you know, so if you, whether you believe or you don't believe, falls in different categories.
I mean, and I don't even like the term science fiction because a lot of stuff in science fiction that's written about, I believe in. So it just isn't
Mm-hmm.
proved science. So they can't call it.
Science fiction from 80 years ago or 50 years ago is now science. I mean,
Oh,
we've proven and changed and done things. So yeah, it's always morphing. Science fiction is quite often based on the possibility of it being real.
yep. And I mean, except for the exception of the Jetsons there, because we still don't get the flying cars. But that,
Well, I really want to run outside on a treadmill with nothing underneath me. That used to freak me out as a kid.
yeah, that was always like a little weird.
So that just doesn't seem like it makes like good idea for anybody.
No, I mean, I could see that being a Destiny and a Final Destination Jetsons edition,
Yeah.
but I mean, the book is just phenomenal. I mean, everything about it. I mean, it could be in so many categories. And you said already, there's a sequel written and more coming, and
Yes.
I could
Yeah, it
see.
picks up about a year later, and it just continues right on into their lives. Everybody's in it, and we pick up new characters. And I actually introduced the idea of witches and Wicca and how that interplays into the spiritual world.
Oh yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit with the satanic ritual in the first book, but I mean,
We
you
go further. You get to know more about that satanic group in the sequel.
yeah, which I mean, I have certain things I want to say, but I don't want to say because I do not want to give away like the last half of the book in any way that's definite because I want the listeners to be able to enjoy this book when they hear about it and just want to pick it up and read it because it's a phenomenal book. And I mean, I will be looking forward to all the future books in it, and I will be interviewing you after every one of you allow me because I would,
Oh, I would love to. Absolutely.
but I mean,
Yeah. Now, writing this book, it was the inspiration for this book. If it it was actually from my son. It came from real life. Whenever my son's now 19 years old, so you know it's been a while. But believe it or not, the concept for this book started when he was very, very young. My father had passed away about a year before he was born. And when he was around 1.5, 2 years old, one day, my mother was holding him and showing him pictures on the wall and looking at all our different family members. And she pointed out my father and called him Papa. And he stopped her and corrected her and told her, no, 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 that's Pop Pop. And she tried to correct him again. He said, no, that's Pop Pop. And we asked him why he would want to call him that or why he said that. He says, well, because he told me that's his name. And it was very chilling because he used to sit there and talk to nobody, and it wouldn't just be a one-sided conversation. I mean, he would look up and respond and laugh and hold his toy up into the air like he was showing it to somebody. And we saw that for several years. But it wasn't until he corrected my mother and told her who was in that picture, that it really started my mind thinking, what would it be like to talk to our loved ones, to be able to see them, for them to stick around, or to be able to come back and visit at will. And that's where the concepts first emerged from. And then from there, I tried to think, what hasn't been done yet? What kind of storylines have I not read out of all the thousands of books I've read? And I tried to figure out something that I thought would be unique and different and keep those pages turning, because you really want to see what's going to happen, because you don't truly know.
yeah, you don't. And I mean, that's actually another thing I loved about the book is that Clay's brother's name is Wayne, and that was my father's name. And my
That's my
dad,
father's name.
oh shit. I mean, geez.
Yes, Michael Wayne. Half his family calls him Michael, half his family calls him Wayne. And I named him after my father.
Yeah, I mean, my dad first name was Wayne, but he died back in 2017, and like the whole like every time I heard his name in the book, I just kept thinking like how great it would be to actually be able to talk to him again and like have him just follow me around for parts of my days at least and like giving me advice and just hearing his hilarious commentary on people in the world and like just
To
seeing that.
introduce him to your kids, to show him what you've done in life, and to tell him stories. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean it'd be amazing, but unfortunately, he hasn't shown to me yet, and I mean, he was cremated, so if you go by supernatural lore, he can't anyway. But that's supernatural lore; doesn't mean it's real. But
That's kind of funny. My father's cremated as well. I have him actually here. And the fact that Wayne was your father's name, and that was my father's name, and everyone called him Michael Wayne. And so I wanted to name the character Wayne after him, because in the book he's sort of the I don't want to say his conscience, but he's always there. He's always there to help him, his protector, his brother. He sticks around to be with his brother, and they end up having this amazing relationship, even though he'd passed on. So I think that was just a little bit of my own hopes and dreams of what I imagine, if my father's there, he's looking after me. And I wanted him to sort of be named after him for that reason.
Yeah, I'm seriously hoping you do some flashbacks or maybe some other future parts of him walking in the room at times that are not exactly the good time to walk in the room.
Yeah, and this, I think it's the sequel. Yeah, the sequel. You find out that in order for them to knock on a door, they have to stick their hands through the door and clap on the other side, because I think I had no other way to announce that they need to come in.
That is priceless. And I have a feeling that's going to lead exactly what I'm hoping it'll lead to, which is going to be hilarious. But I, I love how, I swear to God, it's like I read your mind or something, and I already know all this stuff that I'm asking, but I just want to ask it anyway when I really don't know
Go
anything
for
about the
it.
signals. But I mean, it's. Do you introduce any other kind of supernatural creature into the series eventually? Like, I mean, I don't see how they would fit in, but maybe.
Actually, there are some. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, because I mean, I could see, and we're gonna get all in this later in the creature feature later. We'll get into more of this, I'm sure, but I could see Mothman making an appearance because he's supposed to be an angel. He's supposed to, or actually, he could be a demon too. People think because he's supposed to be a forsayer of doom.
Like I said, in the sequel, I have introduced some witches, and I've taken some of in the first book. There is a group of Satanists, of course, and without giving too much away, they play a part in what is happening in the first book. And so, by the time you get to the second book, I've sort of taken that same group essentially, and I'm going a little bit further with it, showing sort of their side of what was happening. And in so doing, I'm also introducing some good guy witches, Wiccans, and some of them have powers, some of them and it'll all be explained in the book. I don't want to give too much away, but I try to show that if this were real, if this were not fiction, but a legitimate power that people have, how would that interplay with the idea that God is real and that there are angels and then all this? So I mixed the two together. As a matter of fact, there's an entire conversation in the sequel between Father Garrett, the priest, and the head witch. And they're talking about how it works and what makes one and how to how you create whatever powers, whatever you're going for with what you've learned. I'm sorry, I'm stuttering there. I was trying to think ahead, and I started stuttering because I was trying to figure out what to say. I don't want to give too much away about things, but at the same time, I want to explain. For example, I think he explains that when you are when you're praying to God, if you were a mute and you could not speak, you could still pray. So the fact that somebody is a witch in the book, they are still able to create specific things with their spells. I didn't want to go crazy. It's not like the kind of spell you could, cast a spell and make things fly across the room. I don't know. It's not that kind of thing, but they're the type of spells that you might, that a witch might learn to use. I'm so sorry. I feel like I'm stuttering here because I am afraid I'm going to give too much away, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
And
I mean, please don't, because I mean, as much as you give away, people, if they read the first book, and just from what you're saying, people are going to want to read the second book alone. I know I do. I'm already anticipating and looking forward to it. But even though I know, probably, I know it might not even be out to 2023 for God's sake, with the way editing works and all that. But
yeah, it takes a while. It'll probably be a year. I'm just now at the very beginning of the editing phase, and that goes back and forth multiple times before it even begins the production, producing it, publishing it. But but anyway, I am going to introduce different characters. I try to tie them into what would it be like if they were real in our world? How would that work? And then and by the time you get to the third book, the one I'm planning now, I even introduce another character, but I'm not going to say who or what that is because that would be a giveaway for what's going to happen in the book.
Oh yeah, don't give it
So
away.
yes, but I will be introducing another supernatural type of character as well.
Interesting. It'd be even more interesting in the future at some point, and this may be an idea you even want to use, which I won't charge you for, but um it'd be interesting if he met a group of people who are like him and can talk to ghosts, and if he meets like a society that exists that he doesn't know exists.
There are some ideas that are very close to what you're saying for some future books. And he does meet some other people that are mediums like him. Even in the sequel, there's some others. So, yeah, it's coming. It's coming.
Oh
And of
yeah.
course, you know how the first book ends. And so that's a big twist in itself when it comes to people who can speak to the ghosts and see the spirit world besides him.
Didn't even think about that being a possibility, but I'm not going to say why because I don't want to ruin the ending.
Right.
But I, yeah,
It's hard to talk about the book because there's so many surprises and they're riddled all throughout the book. So when you start talking about one thing, it's easy to give away something else that you don't want to give away.
well, when we talk about your second book in the future, then I could allude to some of the stuff in the first book because by then it'll be out long enough that I don't feel bad about giving spoilers.
Oh yeah, by then we can talk.
But yeah, I would love to see even like aliens playing someday to this. I don't know how. That's the thing, is I don't know how they'd play in unless you
You're
actually.
the second person to say that because the scene in the first book where you meet some of those kids that are going out to be, look for aliens. And of course, they're just happen to be in the right place at the right time, kind of a moment. But when I mentioned that, somebody else had told me that'd be really cool if they saw something while they were out there. I was like, well, it kind of takes my book in a whole different direction than I'm going with it. But it's kind of funny that you said that.
Yeah, I just mean you could always play into the whole thing of that aliens original. There's theories that that people have seen are maybe angels and demons, and maybe the grays are the angels and the reptilians are the demons. Like who knows?
So many different theories out there.
Oh yeah, we'll get more into those later, but I'm sure of that. But I just like that's the one way I could see you going with it. But other than that, I'm sure there's 1,000 ways to bring aliens into this at some point. I don't know your future plans of the books series, so I don't know where it even could go at this point. I'm just looking
Right
forward to
now,
finding out.
I'm gonna try to keep it as close to what if this were possible, kind of a question.
Yeah.
And so, I wouldn't bring in werewolves and vampires as much as I love reading about them, and they're some of my favorites. I got really upset when vampire books became a thing, a trend, and I was like, no, man, I've been into vampire books for like 15 years
Mhm.
before that was popular. So then I started to like, everyone would be like, oh, you're into vampires too. And I'm like, no, I was already into that long before the trend came along. So don't judge me. But because people who just hop on those little trends here and there. But
Mhm.
I'm going to try to stay away from some of the more crazy supernatural ideas and try to stick a little bit with more, if this were real, if this were really happening, how would this work in our lives?
Yeah, we'll get we'll get more into that when we do the creature feature because I'm sure I'm gonna be picking ones off my list that I could see possibly being in your book, and I may discuss ways they could be. But yeah. So anyway, what was the other thing I was gonna say about the book? I definitely could see it. We're gonna see more of the police chief, I'm sure, in the second book because he kind of seemed to drop off after the first half of the book.
Yeah, he comes and goes. He does appear again in the second book, but I think he'll have a heavier role in the third book. Actually, he's gonna always be there. He's always one of his kind of buddies, that he's friends with. But I would like to see the police chief become a little bit more stable character in the book. I do like the fact that in the first book you get to go back and see how he met everybody and how they came to be in his life and a part of who he is.
Yeah, I love that too. I like when books like flash back to the past and explain how things came to be. And I like that it's a nice little break from the like it gives you a nice little break from the main storyline. So you kind of like think of the main storyline while you're reading the past. And then when you go back to the main storyline, like you have it all in your head and remembered, and you're not just flying through it. That,
Yes.
that's a Stephen
And
King
every time
technique
I
I
went
always like.
back with flashback, you learn a little something that you can apply to what's happening today as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of my better writing techniques out there that I love to read. I mean, it's a huge thing in Stephen King books to jump back and forth in time, and that's just
Yeah.
one of the things that books like that I always will want to read.
Like I said, the first time I read a book that wasn't linear in its storytelling, it was just so exciting. And from that point on, that's all I ever wanted to read.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to Harry Potter using the pensive to freaking look in the past memories of other people, which kind of along those lines too. And it's just it makes great storytelling technique. But the other thing that I'm hoping happens eventually is that Garrett can possibly eventually in the future find a way to see spirits himself.
Uh oh gosh, you just stumbled onto something that okay, I'll give a little sneak peek into the second book because this doesn't really take away from the storyline too much. It was just fun. They do have a little gift waiting on Garrett when he arrives, sort of a late birthday gift, and it's some camera equipment. So they've started checking into, now that it's so popular nowadays to go ghost hunting and go looking for things. They decided to test out some equipment, and they purchased some for Garrett's birthday. So that does play into it a little bit. I've wanted him to be able to see that world himself.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be so interesting for him to actually meet like the all three spirits and like I mean, obviously he knew Wayne when they were kids, but it'd be nice for him to meet like all three spirits and like get to know like I can't wait till he actually meets Tex and sees him and like and actually like puts everything that because I mean I'm sure Clay telling him what Tex is saying is nowhere near saying the real message of what Tex is saying to him. Like
Right.
I can't wait to see that. But all
Yeah,
right.
it can get a little bit hard to write whenever you've got people who can't communicate and you've got one central person who can, and so everything has to go through him. But yeah, it makes it a little bit easier when they're able to actually talk to each other.
Yeah, which I mean, I'm I can see this being a TV show eventually. Like I can see this series, like somebody's gonna want to turn into a TV show, whether it's
People keep saying this. That makes me laugh because oh, that would be amazing.
I mean,
You are like the 10th person to tell me that.
I mean, I could, I mean, I honestly can't even picture though who would play Clay. Like I'd have to read the description in the beginning of the book again of what he looks like really as an adult, but I mean, I can't just picture. I can't think like an actor doesn't come to mind for him. I mean,
Yeah, I've kind of gone. My husband and I have talked before. I'm like, okay, if we are gonna make a movie, who would we have to play these people? And so we've sat there and we've gone through and tried to pick out different people. What's funny is I think in my mind, the only person that I really know that I would like, if I could just choose anybody to play a part, I was trying to remember Paul Rudd, who plays Ant-Man.
oh, I know who Paul Rudd is. I think everybody knows
I
who Paul
feel like
Rudd
he could
is.
play Garrett. Like I can just picture him as Garrett. He's the right face and the dimple and the curly dark hair, and he's the right age and temperament. I don't know. I see him as the possibility of that role or
Oof.
somebody like him.
Okay, I never even thought of that until you said it, but I could see that in a freaking millisecond. I mean, Paul Rudd,
Uh,
Paul Rudd is ageless. He looks the same as he did 30 years ago, for God's sake.
yes, yeah, he does.
But I mean, I could see him playing that role. He would fit it perfectly. I mean, if we're going the movie route, I could easily see Johnny Depp playing Tex.
Yeah, I could see that too. That would be funny.
It would be hilarious because I could see him doing all the
Yeah,
same.
age him
Just
up with the beard
yeah,
and
I could see him or maybe even Steve Buscemi. I could see both of them pulling off that role hilariously. Like,
there are a lot of them. We probably went through 15, 20 different people's names. Like, oh, he could be, oh, he would do good. Oh, it would be funny. And we kept, talking over it. And the characters are so so strong. They're not just sort of the guy named Bob. They're real and they're tangible and they each have their own look and personality. And it's fun to think about who could play those parts, because you could get some really good
I mean,
actors.
I mean, even if you got maybe Ryan Reynolds as Buzz, like I could see Ryan Reynolds, Johnny Depp, or Steve Buscemi like going back and forth as like a very good pair together. Like it'd be, and I could see Ryan Reynolds playing like the ghost of an agent who died like for the FBI, and like he cracks jokes all the time, and he just like, and he could kick ass. That'd be the funny part, is like just to see Ryan Reynolds ghost kick ass.
Uh, there's so many different ones that I could see in there, though. Yeah, it would be fun to see who they would look at for casting, like what choices they would bring up, and that would be really cool.
I mean, throughout. Okay, I'm gonna ask this because I don't think it really ruins the storyline of the first book at all if you by knowing it, but because throughout the first book you see that Clay is you see all the times in the past where Clay is going through trying to find like ways to control his gift,
Hmm.
like in Africa and whatnot. And my question is like, would you ever think about writing like a, not like a sequel, but like a, I don't know the exact term for it, but like a side book where it's just a story of him like in his college years trying to figure out his powers,
Like a prequel to it.
kind of like a
Uh,
prequel, but kind of, I mean, I don't
yeah,
know.
that might be interesting. That might be kind of cool, or to at least have one book in the series that goes back and shows his search. You know, those who haven't read the book yet, he does spend his early years trying to find a way to get rid of this ability. He's plagued by ghosts, for a long time. He doesn't know how to handle it. He feels like they're dangerous. They could possess him at any minute, and if they do, then if they forget to breathe, he could die. So he was always just really worried. And of course, Wayne stuck around to protect him, but he knew that one day, he was going to have to get past it. And so he began to search for that. And that was what set him off on his path. And eventually he does find what he thinks is going to be the answer he needs. And it turns out it's not exactly what he was looking for, but it was what he needed. And so, and as always, we see that God had his hand in this. He was, his life might not have turned out like he thought it was going to. His brother drowns and he himself was in a coma, and then he gets these powers. But we see that it was in this book, God uses it towards a greater good. He uses it for his purpose, and he takes what has happened to him in his life and makes something good out of it. And so we see that each of these little events that happened throughout his life that he didn't even realize were building somewhere, now that we're able to see it in retrospect, we know there was a cause, there was a reason, a purpose behind it. When he's in Africa, he's talking to this little guy who lives there, who believes in a completely different, doesn't believe in God our Father. He believes probably in the God of the mountain and God of because he's an indigenous person there. And even though he had his own belief system and his own gods, God the Father found a way to continue to use that to his good. And I think that does show that sometimes different religions, different beliefs, different people, we share that idea of faith. We all have to have faith, and that's something that we all share, that we all have in common. And that's why when I wrote this, I thought, even if you weren't a Christian, if you were Muslim or Hindu or Buddhist or agnostic, anyone, you still have to have faith in somebody. You have to have faith in each other. And I wanted people to connect to this and to see that no matter what, that is always a theme in life. That's always something that we share as human beings.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely lined up perfectly with that, and I love that part. I mean, if you do a side book eventually, it'd be awesome. It'd be amazing to see that. I mean, I don't expect it anytime soon, but
I love
someday.
telling that story too, because you've got Garrett listening in at that point, and he's just on the edge of his seat like a little kid listening to a good night story. He's just wants to hear more, wants to hear more. And I don't know. Like I said, I had so much fun writing it, because each of those stories, it was. I feel like everything I put in that book has a reason. It wasn't just extra narrative to fill the space. I constantly gave something to the reader that was going to move the storyline across, that was going to fill in the gaps and make you realize what's happening and why it's happening and how it's in God's hand as it happens. because he's the hero of the story.
All I can say is, Eric Kripke, you need to make this into a TV series on CW. That's all.
Always listen. Yes, call me.
Seriously,
Have your people call my people.
I would turn into that show every freaking week in a
That'd be
second.
awesome.
So, besides the one paranormal experience that gave you the idea for this book a long time ago, have you had any other paranormal experiences?
I have actually, it was probably one of my first real paranormal experiences that I felt without a doubt was happening to me. I mean, you've heard all these stories all your life about ghosts and angels and demons and aliens and all these different things. But when I was in college, I went to a college here in Texas, and I was a theater major, and we were staying after one night. And the theater building is very old. It's an old school, and the theater building itself was built during the Great Depression. And there's always been the story of somebody who passed away, a teenager who was helping to build and dig the catacombs that are deep underground, and he was killed in the process. And so everyone knows that story. Well, about a year before I went to school there, they did a play that had 12 people in the play. And the play itself took place during the Great Depression. Well, at the end of every show, they take a shot of the cast. And apparently, in that photo, when they got it back, there are 13 people in that photo, and nobody knows who that 13th person was. He's wearing clothes of that time period, very Great Depression clothes, and he's just standing in line with the rest of the people, but he was not there when they took the shot. Well, this is a couple years later that my experience came in. We were staying after, and we've been practicing for a scene we had coming up the next day. And it was probably around 10:30, 11 o'clock, and there was nobody else in the entire theater. And this is a huge building. The main stage itself is just ginormous. It has a balcony. Well, we were upstairs above the main stage in some of the classrooms, and all of a sudden we heard the piano begin to play. And they keep a big grand piano on center stage all the time. So we hear it playing, and we've been up there for a while. We were tired, so we thought we'll take a break, go see who's here, and we thought we were alone. So we went on down, and we made all kinds of noise and walked up to the main stage doors and opened them up at the back of the theater. And when we did, the theater itself is just pitch black. I mean, if you shut those doors, you cannot see your hand in front of your face. And there's the piano sitting on main stage, nobody at it. And the exact moment we opened those doors, it went silent. There was no noise. But we could hear the piano all the way up into that moment. We got a little freaked out, we started laughing, hair stands up, that kind of thing. But we went on back upstairs and blew it off and got back to work. And then about 15 minutes passes and we hear it again. So we thought, okay, someone's messing with us. And we were pretty much done anyway at that point. So we gathered up our belongings and we snuck really quietly all the way around the backstage. And we were going to go into the stage door entrances because it opens up right there on the stage next to the piano. So we sneak up there, and there were three of us. And we open the door and we're like, ha! And it just, the music stopped immediately. We could see the piano 10 feet, 15 feet in front of us. And it just not a soul in sight, dead quiet. And again, if you shut that door behind us, you couldn't have seen anything. And my hair stood up on end. I was really just heebie-jeebie kind of moment, and we got out of there pretty quick. And I can tell you, I never was up there late at night by myself for sure again. It was always big companies of us from that point on. I never wanted to be up there while it was all shut down and dark. But that was just one of those moments. There was no other explanation. It wasn't a player piano. All three of us heard it going just as plain as day. We were right behind that stage door. We could hear it, and it just stopped the second we opened that door. So that moment, and of course the piano, I think, is something that somebody who was born and raised in the era of the Great Depression probably could have played. There was a lot more musical instruments played back then when you didn't have television and radio and late night to stay up, reading. What did you do? You played musical instruments. So the fact that maybe he did play and he was there, so it's just always been kind of cool.
Yeah, one or two questions about that. When you open the door to the stage, does the piano face with its keys facing the door or opposite direction?
It's actually at an angle,
Uh,
sort of. I was coming in. It was probably like if I was facing directly at the piano, instead of the keys facing me, turn them towards the right, just at a slight angle. But you could see the whole piano. You could see the bench, everything sitting there.
but well, what I'm getting at is like, did you see any keys moving possibly? Like someone was
The no, the second we opened the door and the light hit anywhere inside the room, it just went dead silent. There was nothing. Right up until we opened the door, though, you could hear it playing loud and plain as day, just like somebody was in there.
Well, I mean, there's been a large history of ghosts and musical instruments that they could play, like being involved. Like people have heard musical instruments playing all the time, and no one is around to play them.
Right.
So, I mean, I truly believe the story 100% was real because ghosts do like to live their past lives, and like you said, during the Great Depression era, a lot of people played instruments because it was a way to make money. One, and
Hmm.
two, it was just something to do back then instead of just.
Right. Your mom would teach you because hey, you've got a piano and you've got 5 kids and you got to learn something, and she'd teach you to play at night or whatever. Yeah, it was a really cool experience, and it's something I teach school, and I'm kids and all that while they're doing art, in order to keep them engrossed in their art and keep them without getting distracted. Sometimes, as a matter of fact, I've got several of them that tell us a story, Miss A. And so I'll break into some kind of story, and sometimes we'll get into the supernatural talks, like who's ever seen a ghost or who's ever heard a ghost story or watched some cool show on television. And that's always a fun one because the kids love to chime in and give their stories. But that's always the one I tell them. The kids love to hear it.
Well, it's funny because I actually had paranormal investigators in my house back in December, like a few weeks before Christmas, because we, well, we now something there are strange things going on basically, and we now believe that the original builders and owners of this house, a couple, are still residing here, even though they didn't technically die here, which by a lot of lore means they couldn't. But I don't know what to believe because the investigators took a picture of. I felt like very cold all of a sudden in my son's bedroom, and I was standing by his door with the door shut in the room, and like all of a sudden my back just had chills like crazy, and I I I told them that, and the one investigator took a picture of me, and in the picture it kind of looks like you can see like a face behind me, or maybe even two. It's I
Oh,
mean
wow.
it's I mean
That's crazy.
but it's hard to tell because they had like a light in the room that was magenta purplish. So I can't really
Right.
tell if I'm seeing like the light reflecting something or I don't know. It's
Right.
just but
You never know.
we were talking to that we because they were using divining rods to talk to ghosts. And I mean, I don't know how well divining rods actually work or if it's just the person who's holding them like you doing it
That's
themselves.
some pretty cool looking stuff on television. There's been a few times they've been used, and like they're not even being touched and they're moving, so that's pretty cool.
But I mean, we were asking the ghosts and everything if they liked everything I did to the house to fix it up when I bought it back in November and everything. And like I could have sworn I heard a thank you in my ear. Like no one else heard it. I asked after, but it was just the softest like
Mm.
thank you in my ear. And I just got chills like down my hair was standing up all the way down my back. Like it's just like, what the fuck is this? Like I was like, and I've always wanted to experience something in my life, but I never did. And like I was just, those who want to see don't see. Like
Yeah.
it's those who don't want to see and don't look for it to end up seeing.
Yeah, you can't control when or if it happens. It's gonna happen or it's not. I had a friend that swears their whole family had these experiences. So I don't know. I've never been to her house. She was actually a friend of my sister's, but they used to swear that they would come home and laundry that they had started when they left would be done and folded. Or the one time she said they unloaded a bunch of groceries from the car, put them on the table, went back out for the second load. And when they came in, all the groceries were put away. Just weird things like that. It's like, man, I'll take that ghost any day. I'm gonna do
There,
my laundry and do my chores. Then yes, they can visit me and stay at my house, and I'll give them
ser-
their own room.
seriously, is that the Alice from the Brave Bunch ghost or something? Like, geez.
Yeah, I don't know whoever it was obsessed. And they also said that sometimes they'd come home and all the chairs would be up on the table or knocked over, or all the drawers and doors would be open, things like that as well. It was never anything too menacing. It was just unusual stuff. But yeah, there were times when they would come home and things would be chores would be done. I always thought that was a crazy story. I don't know if that's all true or not because I never witnessed it, but their family, their whole family swore it was true. So I don't know, it was more than just one person telling the story.
Yeah, that's completely wild. I mean, I mean, if I came home and my chairs were up top the table or like all the drawers and cabinets are open, I'm gonna be freaked out beyond belief, and I'm gonna be like running out the front door, like smoking a cigarette, like what the hell just happened?
Yep,
But
I'm packing, I'm moving.
so, any other paranormal experiences you yourself had, or is that pretty much sum it up?
Probably about that. I mean, there's always those moments of little things here and there where, did I see something? Did I hear something? Moments where, maybe I've even said hi to somebody before, a stranger, and then I turn for a second. When I turn back, they're gone. And it just always makes you wonder who you're talking to, who you see and who you don't see. So, other than just little moments of things that could be, may not be, just kind of depends. I've never really experienced anything major. My son, however, I think was the most special thing to me though, was because I do believe he was talking to somebody. 1.5-year olds don't converse with the air and show them their toys and laugh unless there's somebody there to converse with. And then for him to see a photo of my father and to know immediately who that was and what his name was, and to tell us that, he told us that's his name. What do you mean? What's his name? He said it. So he was too young to make that kind of thing up, to even understand what he was saying. He just told us his truth. And that just, it resonated with me. And like I said, that's what really was the catalyst for me figuring out this book. I just had to figure out how I was going to play that into a unique story that nobody had read before.
Yeah, I mean, like I truly believe kids can see more than anybody else can. The whole
Mhm.
the whole baby genius theory that when you're
And it's not.
before you hit the age where you can talk, you have access to so many other realms and stuff. I think that you can see. I think that's why I think it's why young kids and babies cry all the time because they can see things we can't, and
Maybe.
and they can't even tell us or show us what they're seeing because it's just not they're below that age. And but I think once you start getting to the age where you talk and whatnot,
Mhm.
you lose that ability.
When my mother was young, she was in a terrible car accident, and she swears that the doctor said she was unconscious the whole time. But she can remember watching everything happening on the uh, ambulance. She can remember seeing them working on her, herself laying there, everything. But they swear that, she was unconscious and there's no way she could remember that. But she says she remembers seeing it happen, watching it happen as if from above. And then there was the story, a preacher that we used to have years ago. He himself was in a near-death accident, and he said that while he was unconscious, in that moment, he actually was met by somebody who claimed to be an angel. He doesn't remember what they look like, really. It's just a memory of it being there. And he says that during that time, he saw other spirits trapped here on earth. And he was told that he wasn't done. He was going to be waking up soon, but he was there just to be with him while, he was in that moment. And that he could see these other spirits. And he said some seem to just be visiting, but others seem to be trapped. And their hell was being trapped here on earth. And he said that the one he remembered was, I think he said, this is years ago, that this kid had committed suicide, and his hell was staying behind watching his mother grieve for him. And that always kind of stuck with me too. I've thought about that over the years, and if there was truth to that, what that would be like. Who is left here until the end of days, until God's ready to come back. And I don't know, there's just so many different theories and conspiracies and ideas and thoughts that maybe there's a little bit of truth to a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be. Even if you ask a statistics major or a probability expert, they're going to tell you that there's definitely got to be some chance of some of it being real because things don't come from nowhere. And a lot of these creatures, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, actually, but a lot
Yeah,
of
go
them, a lot, well, nah, we'll get there in a second, but
ahead.
I don't like to rush it. But a lot of these creatures go back to ancient times of people seeing them or things similar to them. And there's got to be some truth behind it. I mean, there just
Right.
has to be. So
Yeah.
100% believe in a lot of this stuff is possible. That's why I like to say I'm agnostic. I don't like to say I'm an atheist because I just don't want, I can't believe there's nothing out there. I mean, there's gotta be something. I mean, I don't know if it's a big capital G God or if it's Zeus or Odin or who knows. I mean, Ra. I mean, God, like I can go on. I mean, there's so many different gods out there throughout time, and there's so many stories about them that some of them had to exist. Some of them had to, whether they're gods or aliens, who the hell knows?
In my heart, I know God, and in my beliefs, I am so very concrete, and I feel like once you come to know God, once you do know He exists, and He becomes a part of you, and it comes into your life, it's so tangible, and all of a sudden, it's like, how do people not know He's there? But I understand when you don't know and you don't believe, or you're not sure, there are so many different forms of belief and religion and spirituality. And I mean, even people who look at the idea of alien races, and there's different theories and conspiracy theories about how they first came to Earth and where they came from, or where Earthlings came from. I mean, it's almost an endless number of ideas that may always be unprovable, but that doesn't stop people from trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I liked how you explained the dinosaur era in your book too. That just
Thank you. Thank you. No one even mentions that ever. And I love that explanation. I actually believe in that explanation.
I
It's
mean,
my theory. It's just a theory. There's no proof behind it, but it's my theory and I love it. Would you like me to explain it a little bit?
if you want to give it away, be my guest, but I
Okay.
mean, I don't want to make you
I
give away
won't touch
things
on
you
it
don't.
too much, but
Uh,
I've always thought that, in the beginning of the book, beginning of the Bible, we read, in the beginning there was a heaven and earth. So that means it existed. It was solid. It was formed. And then in the second sentence, it was without form and void. So how does something go from being made, from existing, to having no form or void? And then it talks about how God pulled together the waters, and He pulled together the earth, and He pulled together, all these things. So that means it was there, it existed, and He began to create the earth out of that. So my theory is this: the earth was made billions of years ago. We know this. We know it has existed for a lot longer than, if you were to think that God time began with the Bible, that's only what, 4, 5, 6,000 years ago. So we know that the earth is billions of years old. We know this. So what if God made the earth and He filled it with creatures and dinosaurs and all these different things and all these different creations, and they existed for all these time periods, and over the time period we had the crustacean period and the ice age, and all these different things, because we know the earth is always changing. Well, at the same time, in heaven, God tells how Lucifer, his most precious angel, was basically, one day he decided he was just as smart or as good as God, and he tried to take over. And God did not like this, and there was the big battle, and He kicked him out, and he became Satan here on earth. So what if, when God kicked him out of heaven, he was so angry and so riled at God for doing that, that he basically threw a temper tantrum and destroyed everything God had made? So he destroyed the entire earth, and suddenly the earth was without form and void. And then in the Bible, God pulls it together again. He reforms the earth, and Satan is already there on earth. We know that because he comes to Adam and Eve in the form of a snake. So, what if that is what happened? And that accounts for the time period, the age of the dinosaurs, and how God reformed man in His own image and started fresh and new. And by image, I think it doesn't just mean physical, it meant mental. God wanted somebody to talk to, someone that He could converse with, that wasn't, that was more mature, and, that had, there's a word I'm looking for, and I'm so tired. It's been a long day. What do you call it? Over time, when you, like the dinosaurs, evolution, or whatever you might call it, over time, uh, all these different things have had a chance to be here and live. And then once those were gone, God created mankind in His own image, someone that He could talk to and be friends with. And uh, I don't know. I like you said, I liked that idea. I always have, because it puts the correct timeline in sequence. It makes everything make sense, both the biblical side and those who don't believe in the biblical side. I very firmly believe there was a Big Bang. I very much do, but I think it was God who said, boom, he set that Big Bang off, and there's just too many things that are so precise. I mean, there's an episode of Sheldon, young Sheldon, where he talks about how if the earth was just 1 centimeter too closer or, farther away from the sun, we would burn up or we would freeze, but it's that perfection that give him pause. What if there is a creator? At least gives you the idea of there could be a creator, because it's so delicate, so perfect. Every, life and the circle of life. Well, everything depends on the next thing. And you remove one sequence of that and everything crumbles, And so I think it kind of gives you that idea of, I think both exist hand in hand. It's not one or the other, it's both.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely agree with a lot of that too. I mean, whenever people say God created the Big Bang, I just think about that episode of Family Guy where Peter's telling like Bible stories and God farting when he's having a beer chugging contest is what makes the Big Bang happen.
Uh,
Like that's just what my mind goes to when I hear that, and it just makes me laugh, which is why I was laughing when you said that.
yeah.
But I mean,
And then
but
there's the episode where Stewie gets in the time machine and they go so far back in time that he realizes he actually created the Big Bang because he went back in time, like the whole time loop kind of
yeah,
phenomenon.
they did a similar thing on Futurama too. But I mean,
Yeah, they did. They touch a lot of that on different shows, but
yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, that's why I can't be atheist because I mean, there are so many things on this earth that are just unexplained that there has to be something to believe in. There just does. I mean, I don't know what it is, and I don't even want it. As I always tell my girlfriend and my mom and everybody else in the world, if they ask, until I see evidence, or I'll believe in a big capital G God if him or an angel of his actually appears in front of me and talks to me. That or talks to me in some form or way where I know it's him without a doubt and not some demon trying to get in my head.
that's where faith comes into play.
I can't have faith in things I don't. I'm a scientific minded person. I have to see to
I get
believe.
it, but
I mean,
I feel it. I believe it, and to me, it's just proof, just as solid in my mind as the scientific evidence is.
I've met pastors that my brother was born again Christian after college, and like I met his pastor, and I've met other pastors before too who they can talk to you in a way where they make you feel like you feel like there's a God there or something influencing your mind, but at the end of it, you're just like, was it really there, or were they just saying certain things that make you think it's there, like and invoke certain like euphoria in your mind. Like I
Well,
don't.
never stop questioning. Never stop trying to believe.
I mean, that's basically why I do, but I just keep questioning everything, and that just leads to more rabbit holes and more black
Yeah.
holes. I mean, it's just endless, endless, endless. But yes, the book is phenomenal. I can't stop raving about it because I mean, I
Thank
seriously
you.
told my girlfriend like, you need to read this book. You need to read this book. Which
Oh, I love it.
she can't read Kindle books because just her eyes can't handle it. But I'm like, we'll find out a way to get one. I'm like, I'll buy one if I have to. I'll buy another one if I have to. I don't care. It's worth it. I mean, an,
That
auto,
would be awesome.
an autographed copy, I never would mind either. But
I could do that. I could do that. Yeah.
because I could see this, if I see this becoming big someday, and I want to say I have an autographed copy of the first book, and that I talked to this author before she even got big. If you're the
That
next,
would be wonderful. I'd love it.
if you're the next J.K. Rowling, I want to be on board.
I just got to get that right agent out there to pick this book up and get behind it.
Well, I mean, I definitely going to be sharing the hell out of this podcast and making sure everybody knows about it. So that definitely is going to happen. So I'm looking forward to that 100%. But is there anything else you want to say about the book before we move on to the creature feature segment?
If anybody, if when everybody reads it, I would
There you go.
love to hear from you. I've got my email stuff in the book, but you can find me at brandyalexanderbooks.com. That's my website. You can leave, if you would please leave a review for me wherever you purchased it at. And it's available, of course, on Amazon. They throw it on sale all the time, up and down with the price. But they also have it, anywhere you buy books, Barnes and Noble, Walmart.com. It was a Target, Goodreads. It's all over the place. Type my name in, you'll find it. But yeah, I would love to hear from people. That's what gets me excited, is to get feedback and to see what people think about it. And absolutely, please call me, talk to me. And again, if I've got somebody out there who wants to get behind this, who does PR work or who works with an agent, I would love to hear from you.
I mean, it definitely needs to get a good agent. I wish I knew people in the book industry at all. I don't anymore. I think I did at one point, actually, just from random occurrences, but I just don't think I know them anymore. Or if I did, I don't remember who the hell they are. But I wish, I wish if I had freaking hell, whoever the hell. I mean, this could be marketed as a young adult book series and would sell like crazy off the shelves or on Kindle. It just would. I mean, I can't even see a video.
Yeah, it's one of those books I feel like you can read it from a young adult all the way up through old age. Like girls, boys, it suits just about everybody.
I mean, honestly, if I was you, and you might have already thought this, I don't know, but I would try to get church groups to give it out to their youth group, like have them give it to their youth groups and have them like, because it will express a lot of the things that they believe in. So it would be a
Yeah, I've gotten a chance to be on a few Christian podcasts, and it's kind of cool to look at it from that angle. When I first started writing this, I didn't set off to write a Christian novel. That wasn't what it was about. It was just a fictional story. It had ghosts and it had angels and it had demons, and it was just supposed to have been a fun story. But like I said earlier, it's hard to write about those things without your faith seeping in. And so, that does become a part of it. And it's written from that Christian point of view, from that standpoint. But it's not written to preach at people or to try to teach them some big life lesson. It's just this amazing story about a guy who can see all this world and how he interacts with it and how he himself learns who God is and how powerful that he can be when he is on your side.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, and it's an amazing story. And whether you're a Christian or not, you can enjoy it. As I said multiple times, I'm not a Christian. I was brought up Christian, but I'm not a Christian anymore, and I don't identify as one because that would besmirch the name Christian if I identify as one, as I'm sure.
Mhm.
Because my family's always surprised on holidays when I step in foot into a church and it doesn't burst into flames. But I
Yeah.
mean, I it's enjoyable. It can be enjoyed by anybody of any faith in my mind. And if you can't see past your own faith to enjoy the story, then that's a you problem. That's not a problem with the book.
Yeah. That's great. That's exactly it. I wanted it to be someone that no matter who you were, you could find a connection with it.
And I can't wait to see where this series goes. And I just I look forward to reading the future ones. And
Well, if you hear from anybody who's read it, please let me know what they think.
oh, I definitely will once I actually start getting it out there and have people come back to me and say, "Oh my God, this book's good!" Like,
I
and
can't wait.
you told them where to hit you up. I mean, I'm sure they'll be blasting you up on Twitter saying it's amazing and whatnot. Which actually, make sure you add me on Twitter so I can tag you in this when I do.
Yes, I can. You'll find me at Brandy Alexander Books at Twitter, Brandy Alexander Books at y'all. No, sorry, I already said that a while ago at .com. But see, Facebook as well. Facebook as well. I'm trying to get an Instagram started, but I am not tech savvy, and I just took a look at it for the first time the other day, and I haven't sat back down yet to exactly figure that one out.
Instagram's pretty easy. I just set mine up not too long ago when I started podcasting. But all right, well, we're gonna wrap up the book section of this episode. As much as I could talk about this book all day, but I don't want to give too much away to the listeners. So we're gonna move on to Jeremy's creature features, which is
All right.
I'm hoping soon to be a very big thing, or maybe it could be its own podcast today. Even.
You need to get you some theme music. Bum bum bum.
There is actually theme music in the beginning of the show, but I just
Get
don't.
you some creature feature theme music. Whenever it starts, you have to have that little segment.
I know a few rappers. I could maybe get something made up, but I actually do. But
Uh,
But all right,
Uh,
as far as the creature feature goes, let's see. Well, I gotta start with the obvious one, which is which I think kind of goes into your theory of the dinosaurs. I think that's kind of
mhm.
like maybe some of these are left behind from that time, but where do you think Bigfoots and Sasquatches go into all this?
I actually think that the possibility of them being out there is quite real. I mean, we are constantly discovering something every single day on this planet that we did not know existed the day before. So, if they're an intelligent species and they're able to hide themselves, and there's probably not a lot of them. Their question is always like, why haven't we found one along the way or found the skeletal remains of one? But if they're intelligent, then they know where to hide and how to keep hidden. Um, Nowadays, with video cameras becoming so prevalent everywhere you go, there's these shows coming on television, Paranormal Caught on Camera, and it's one of my favorites actually. But you see, from the aliens to the ghosts to the possibility of angels, as well as all these different cryptids. I always say it wrong.
Cryptids, you
uh,
got it right.
Okay. Uh, there's just so many possibilities out there. And sometimes you see them and you're thinking, that could have been faked. That could have been pre-planned. But pardon me. But sometimes you see these videos and it's like, no, that was just a surveillance camera, or that was some people doing something completely different and you can see it in the background, you know, so I don't know. There are times when I see these things, and you really have to question if this were beat to be faked, how would they have done that? Because it does not seem to have been faked. And so, yeah, you got to keep your mind open to the possibility that they exist.
I mean, okay, well, I'm not gonna go into my whole diatribe here about Sasquatches because I try to throw a little bit in each show because I mean I always hit Bigfoot as usually the first or second in this creature feature, but I've gone into before on the last episode or episode before on why skeletons aren't found. I'm not going to go into that route again because
Yeah.
there's a lot of stories about that actually
Right. Well,
are
there's always
relevant.
the theories.
But I mean, the one thing I will go into that I didn't agree with what you said is there is a large population of them. There has to be just because they are basically kind of worldwide, maybe not in certain parts of the world because of obvious reasons, but they are mainly worldwide. And
And they show up all over the place,
they,
different forests and areas and
they
remote
I mean,
Arctic areas.
Native Americans and Native people from a lot of countries have seen these creatures since. I mean, Australia. What do you call them? I can't think of the Australian native name. I'm slipping on that, but yeah, I mean, they've seen them on Australia, North America, South America,
Russia.
Russia. I mean, and even in the Himalayas and Tibet. I mean,
Yeah.
they're all through ancient times. There's cave drawings of these creatures. Native Americans passed down stories of dealing with hairy men tribes that could speak to them and actually communicate like the
I just
and barter.
I guess I don't think they've reached like millions and millions populating the earth. I think they stay in small tribal areas if they exist. They have families probably that they travel with. And I imagine that they do have areas that are so remote that we can't get to them. We don't even know those areas exist, hidden places that we can't even get to. But yeah, I do. I think that there's definitely a possibility that they exist.
Well, that's 100% where like the Yetis come in, and because I hate the word, I hate, as I've said before in the show, I hate the word abominable snowman. I think it just is a stupid
I just
name.
think it's cute. I think it's a cute way of saying
Yeah, I
Yeti.
mean, it's cute if you think of like Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer cartoon, and like the freaking abominable snowman on that.
Yeah, you ever go to Monsters Inc. when they get locked out with the abominable snowman and
Yeah,
they have to get back inside? Yes.
yeah. I mean, abominable snowman I just don't like the name of. I mean, Yeti just sounds more real. I mean, and they've proven to this day that there are that the Tibetan, I think I'm saying that right. People have 5 different types of Yetis they believe exist, and
Yeah.
only one of them has been proven to be a species of ape that we didn't know existed before, or
Yeah.
not ape. I'm sorry, a species of bear that we didn't know existed
Mm.
before that lives in those mountains. But I mean, just there's and I do believe they live in small gatherings. I think it's I think they live with their parents until they're old enough to leave the nest, or however you want to put it, and they go out, and that's when you see solo Bigfoot sightings are
Mhm.
happen. Because I've heard stories too. I mean, speaking of paranormal quote on camera, shout out to Derek Hayes on Monsters Among Us podcast, who's on paranormal quote on camera,
Oh, wow.
because he actually did have someone call into his podcast with a story about getting knocked down in the woods and while hunting, and having a female Bigfoot breastfeed him while he was injured, and
Oh
it
my goodness.
and and
That's crazy.
end up hearing a male Bigfoot in the background, he believed, at the same time. So I mean, they definitely do roam in packs. And I mean, I've heard his story multiple times on the podcast now because it's one of the most famous ones. And he even said that he thinks that the milk had some healing properties that humans don't know about.
I wouldn't be surprised if they, yeah, I mean, we all, I don't know, there's just so many things about this world that we don't know. We think we know so much, and, you know, and that's just in our physical world, not including like what's underwater or what's in outer space, just in our world here, this, the unknown.
Yep. And the guy who's told that story, his name, who story that is, his name is Mac. Mac, if you ever hear this podcast, I swear to God, I would love to get you on and talk about that. Is you are one of the guests I am been hoping for since I started this podcast. And I hope you actually hear this someday so you can get on here, because your story needs to be told in more detail, and there's 1,000 questions that need to be answered. But moving on from that,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I can go on about Bigfoot for hours, but I can't, because then we'll never get anywhere else, and that tends to happen with this section. So we already talked ghost spirits, obviously. We already talked angels and demons. We don't need to revamp all that. And we talked aliens enough, but do, the only thing I have to ask about aliens to you is, do you believe that what people believe are aliens are actually angels or some kind of heavenly being?
No, actually, I believe they would be aliens. I think it's kind of selfish to think that, you know, I believe God, and that in all the worlds He's created and all these planets that go on for, you know, light years and light years and light years, billions and billions and billions, that we're the only one that has intelligent life. I think that that's ridiculous. Now, I don't know how that plays when it comes to the idea of Christianity and Christ, and, you know, if that's an earthly thing or what. And it's not up to me to say. But I do believe there's just too many encounters. I mean, you look back between people from Africa and South America and North America, and, you know, all over Europe, cave drawings of the exact same thing. We have pyramids all over the earth. You know, now they're finding them under the water. There's just encounter after encounter after encounter. And again, now that we have cameras everywhere, we always have these videos coming out of, and it's not just like a tiny little dot moving in the sky, but you can see what it is. You can see what it looks like, and, you know, how it's moving, and all of these. It's almost, I've read and watched a lot of stuff on television, and I have a theory. I don't know if it's true, but it's a theory. What if there were many, many different planets with many, many different races of aliens? And we know Earth is a relatively new planet. So, what if over time, all these different alien civilizations have sort of bonded together to create, let's just say, kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy, you know, all these different people from different races and different planets all working together in one unit, like protecting each other. As a matter of fact, there was something the other day on a science. It seems impossible. It's like there's 10,000 different galaxies that have been smashed together into one spot in the universe. And they don't understand why they would all be compacted there. And I got to thinking, well, what if, because they have the ability to use black holes and move around, what if when a planet becomes, let's call it for lack of a better word, woke to the fact that there are other planets and other alien creatures, what if at that point they've become awake enough to join the union or the federation or whatever you want to call it, and all of these planets or solar systems or galaxies are being moved together so that they're all protecting each other all in one spot? And so, meanwhile, they've been watching Earth for millions of years, watching us develop from very early on all the way till now. And they've sort of visited us throughout time. They've shown us things. Maybe our technology has taken bumps. I mean, look at the fact that we were supposedly visited in the 40s, and then suddenly we have a space program 20 years later. Our technology just exploded at that point. And, to go from building an airplane and flying for the first time to landing on the moon in less than 70 years, that's insane if you think about it. And so, I don't know how much we've been in contact. I mean, who knows? Maybe our president's very well aware of what's going on. We just recently had all these different countries come forward and say, hey, there really are some unexplained objects happening in our sky. We're admitting this now. So it's kind of like a little bit at a time keeps the people from going into shock. You seep it out there, you put it on television, you have paranormal shows, the president announces that these actually are that we're unexplained objects. Eventually people will get so jaded to it that when they finally say, hey, guess what, there's aliens and they're here and they've been here, that we're not going to freak out as quickly as we would have if they just suddenly appeared out of nowhere and we had no clue they were there. It's like they've been preparing for us to become awake enough to understand that they exist and to understand what that future technology is about. I don't know. It's just a theory, but it's a lot of different theories, and I like to think about it. It's fun.
Oh, it is 100% is fun. I mean, yeah, there are thousands and thousands of theories about aliens, and you could talk about them for weeks straight. And I mean, we'll never know the answer until we know the answer. I mean, it's just the way it is. I mean,
Yeah.
but like Stephen Hawking even says, like, why do we want to encourage aliens to come to? Because as he said, they're going to destroy us if they come, probably because they're going to be superior by far with technology, and it's going to be a war of the world situation, possibly, or something like
Well, like
that.
if they were going to destroy us, they would have done it already. They had the time, the ample opportunity. We have been here forever. They've been there longer than we have because they're that far advanced. So I think they're curious. I think every time there's another civilization, they're here to watch us and to test us and to see what we're doing and how are we doing it. And they're waiting for us to reach a point of knowledge where we're able to accept them and understand so that we can be a part of them. I don't know. I'm not saying there's not bad guy ones out there, because hey, if they're out there to protect us, then that means they're protecting us from something. So maybe there's different sides. Maybe the idea of Star Wars and the good guys and the bad guys, the galactic and the Republic and the all of that is kind of, in a way, sort of true. Who knows? Who knows?
Well, I mean, in Marvel Comics, there was always this storyline that all the different alien races meet on one of the home planets, and they say Earth is a backwards dirt planet, and that we don't want to. They all agree basically that we will not touch Earth until they get to a certain point where they could interfere with our lives and destroy our lives. I mean,
Right.
of course, that
We're,
time.
we're young. We're just little babies compared to them.
I mean, of course, they do have interaction with different Earth superheroes and whatnot throughout the years, but I mean, and there has been evasions in Marvel Comics since then because humans start going to space and Fantastic Four even, and I mean,
Yeah.
they go to space and screw everything up like as always because humans are flawed in many ways. But
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, aliens are. Swear to God, I could do a whole separate show on Bigfoot and a whole separate show on aliens and just talk about them for hours. But moving on, because actually this one's the one I did. Well, we kind of brought this up earlier, but I want to kind of. What do you think the Mothman or Mothmen that people have seen in Chicago, Chernobyl, and just a bunch of different places all over the world have seen? China, I believe, too. I mean,
I haven't read or seen a whole lot about it. I know who you're referring to or what you're referring to. Um, I guess just based on what little I have seen, if I had to classify it, it seemed almost like demonic, like a shadow of something, something that is not a spirit, but it's not of this world either. So if wild guess, and again, if I studied it more, if I saw more about it, I might have a different theory or a different idea. But just the idea from what I've seen, I mean, if you remember back in like the 80s and 90s and the Inquisitor, all those magazines you would get at the checkout counter, they would have stuff in there about the Mothman. It's so sometimes I don't know if it's stories that people like to tell because it's fun to tell a scary story, or if it is based on things that people have seen. And if so, if it was real, would it be a demonic entity? Would it be this like shadow creature kind of thing? So I don't know. There's a lot of theories behind these creatures, but I don't want to ever discount anything really fully. Not completely anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't. I mean, the whole Mothman thing, actually, it lines up kind of perfectly in your book because the way you describe the demons reminded me of Mothman, like 100%. Like it reminded me of all the reports of Mothman in the 70s and 60s war,
Mhm.
and like what people reported seeing were Chernobyl, like the same exact description as the demons in your book. And I was like, ooh, that's why I had to ask, like, if eventually you might explain that, or maybe do a flashback in one of the books to 1970s Chicago bridge collapsing on Christmas.
Oh yeah, that'd be kind of cool, huh? I hadn't even given that much of the thought. You do find out more in the sequel about how the demons became demons, how they went from being angels to being demons.
Oh, I mean, anybody who's read the Bible kind of knows how that happened, but
It goes into a little bit more detail about
um,
the sequence of basically of how what happened.
so kind of like how a Jedi turns into a Sith.
Like I kind of dove into in the excuse me in the first book I mentioned these three tombs, these three books that were supposedly written by the angels themselves, that sort of like God's little instruction books, or God's little history books. And so in the second book, they actually go into those tombs and we start to look at them more and we find out more about each of them.
Yeah, I mean, oh, yeah, I do remember that part of the book and very clearly. And yeah, I mean, I love that idea of like instruction books from God, that like Supernatural had the tablets, like every good book that has to deal with God and heaven and hell and all that. I mean, even in Evil Dead, they had the Necronomicon and stuff like that.
Yeah, I love Bruce Campbell.
We actually on my other show, Bracket Bastards, we actually just did a horror franchise and horror comedy brackets, and of course, Evil Dead's in both of those.
Have you ever heard the Bruce Campbell song by Psycho Stick? It's an homage to Bruce Campbell.
I can't say I ever heard of it, but now I'm gonna have to Google it
Yes,
eventually.
Psycho Stick is a crazy band. They sing all kinds of stuff. They do like a heavy metal version of the alphabet and a heavy metal version of the hokey pokey. A lot of cuss words. You don't want to play at a kid's birthday party, but yeah, they're hilarious, and they do an entire homage to Bruce Campbell.
I will definitely have to look that into that later, 100%.
Yeah, look them up. They're great.
And I like, yeah, Dirty Kid songs. I mean, I've heard Korn do some of those, so I definitely do like those. But
Oh,
um,
you'll Psycho Stick.
all right, this next, I mean, okay, so these are usually two different categories, but I'm gonna combine them all into one just to kind of see,
Okay.
because I want to see how it stands in your idea of how the world was created, and two, I want to see if there's ever a chance that you'll go into this in your
Okay.
books, I should say. But it's gonna be merpeople slash water monsters such as Loch Ness Monster, Champ, Ogopogo. I mean, the list goes on forever.
Right.
But
I think things like the Loch Ness Monster, there are some photos, there's the old original photos, but nowadays there's been a lot more kind of coming out, different ponds, especially around the Europe, in that area. I think that the possibility that they're out there definitely exists. We've even seen some like up in like Michigan. There's been photos of things up in that vicinity. So I think that there are. I mean, we know now that there is a giant squid. We know it exists. Yet you go back in time just 30 years or so, and it was just a figment of people's imagination. They made that up on shipping boats hundreds of years ago. No, they existed. but they have stayed down below where we are at for so long. So what else is out there? I mean, there could be anything out there. So I definitely think that those could exist. It would be great if, like the giant squid, we had some proof. We've started finding suction cup holes on the sides of whales that were the size of dinner plates, and then we had tentacles that washed up on shore, and then eventually, we caught them on camera. But
Well,
mermaid,
technically, we've had both of those things happen.
what's that?
We've had proof of tentacle marks on dead whales or dead
Yeah,
sharks,
that's
and
what I was saying. That's actually, pardon me. So yeah, we had proof. For a long time it was little pieces of proof, and then finally we got the whole thing. So I think there's others could be out there.
and oh
Now,
yeah, you were talking about squids. I'm sorry, I was jumping to like sea monsters right away, but
okay,
yeah, I mean, we could. I mean, there have been bodies of creatures that have washed up on beaches all over the world, and people take pictures of them, and no one has any idea what the freak they are. But then the government steps in and they disappear,
yeah,
and
that's what it always is.
they try to say, "Oh, it's a diseased sperm whale or something like that."
Yeah, yeah. Now, okay, there was a rumor, of course, when Barnum and Bailey first started the circus, that they had a actual mermaid. It was dried, it was like mummified, but they
Yeah.
actually had one, and it stayed with them for a long time, and it was supposedly checked out by scientists and all this, and then there was a fire that burned the building and it was gone. And since then there's been a lot of photographs people have taken. They did that TV show for a while, and then it came out that a lot of that was faked, and they did it just for the TV show. And so, and then when they do that, I think it makes people start to stop believing, because it's like, oh, everyone keeps saying they faked it and they faked it, so now I don't know what to believe. But there are some videos and things that I've seen that do make you wonder again, how much trouble would you have to go through for this to be a fake? This was really well done, otherwise. And sometimes you see things and you're like, okay, why would that person be filming that unless it was set up? Nobody would be filming that. But then there are times when you see things and it's like, okay, this could very much totally be very real, because they would have no reason to fake this. So I like to keep my options open. I like the creativity, the creative side of me, the imaginative side of me, the part that loves to write and to read and to see all these movies. That part of me is definitely a believer. I want to believe because it's fun to believe.
Oof, Fox Mulder call back right there. I love it. But and actually, the original name of this segment was going to be called "What Do You Want to Believe?" But I thought "Creature Feature" sounded better, so I went with that because the other one's kind of wordy and
You're catchy.
yeah. But all right. And I know. Okay, so you said you're not going to put vampires and werewolves in your book, which we're not going to go into vampires because that's a topic that's just been. I think it's overkill too at this point. Yep. So let's just do one last creature and then we'll call it a day here. So,
Okay.
what do you think of, and I don't like to call them werewolves because that to me, that's not a thing,
Lichen.
dogmen.
Oh, dogman. I thought you were going to go with lichen.
No,
Um,
I do like and liken, but
I again, anything's real. I don't know if I so much believe in. I think there are types of paranormals that it's the imagination. We want to believe, and so we created these imaginations, and a lot of the stuff that was formed, the ideas like behind vampires and things, came hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And back then too, there was a lot less scientific proof of anything, and people's imaginations filled in the gaps, when they didn't understand something, or when something seemed, like the idea of people when they would put bells onto the dead when they buried them, and they thought they were turning into vampires. They just weren't dead yet. But the things like that, they began to fill in the holes and make up stories and create things that help them make sense out of the unexplainable. And a lot of those stories stuck around, and we still hold on to those today, and we use those to create imaginative worlds. Sometimes I think it could be based on some element of truth, and sometimes it just might be someone's figment of their imagination that got a hold of them and they went too far with it. But yeah, I mean, that's just I never really want to discount anything completely.
Well, I'm just gonna leave you at this because I'm not gonna go into my full rant on Dogman, but I would advise you to look into the Beast of Bray Road, the Land Between the Lakes creature
Mhm.
in Michigan, actually. And last thing is, look, Google sometime Dogmen sightings, because one of the first pop-ups you'll see is a map of the United States with stories of people having encounters with dogmen,
So,
and it might make you a believer,
have you
100%.
seen the film from Skinwalker Ranch that looks like the guy who's turning from like a looks like a black leopard into a human being, and it's like you see it literally go from him climbing the mountain like a leopard, and then he stands up and it becomes a human almost. It was a really cool video. It was shot from a distance, but you could see it down in the ridge of the mountain. It was on Skinwalker Ranch. So that was also one of those kind of moments that it's made me think before about people who can change shape. You just never know.
Well, I mean, okay, skinwalkers are a whole nother category completely, but which I went into a little bit in my first episode of the show, but I will remember that for next time you come on the show, though, and that will be one of the ones we choose that time. That's for sure. But
But
we are hitting our 2 hour mark, and
yeah,
I don't want to keep our listeners having to listen to a podcast forever. I'm not Kevin Smith. I can't do that. So I will say thank you so much for coming on. I look entirely forward to reading the rest of your book series as they come out, and I look forward to having you on the show again. For our listeners, you already know where you can find her. She said it multiple times in the show, so I'm not going to repeat it. You can rewind if you want to hear it again.
just Google my name and put Genesis, and it will pop up.
And as always, you can find me at Juggalo Bastard on Twitter and Instagram, and as Jeremy Bryant on Facebook. And yes, the group page for this podcast will be starting soon. I'm working on it. But other than that, you can find me at those social links, and you can also find me on Bracket Bastards podcast, pop culture comedy tournament podcast, basically. And it's fun. You'll enjoy that too if you like to laugh. Not minivan friendly, though. We do say that. So,
Uh,
once again, my guest has been Brandy Alexander, author of Genesis. And I'm not even going to try to say the subtitle again, but author of Genesis and the soon to come Genesis series, which I cannot wait to read.
we're gonna call it the Paranormal Alliance series.
I like that. I like that. Definitely a good name. So, thank you, Brandy, for coming on. It has been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I really, really hope to talk to you again in the
Oh,
future.
I've loved it. This has been a blast. Thank you so much. I can't wait to come back, and happy reading.
And with that, listeners, we'll see you on the Beyond the Fray once again.